in the 80s, and then going into the 90s, DC becoming the murder capital. How did that affect you? Like, how did your life change?
I'm gonna tell you, that's a good question. My life changed drastically. First and foremost, I grew up listening to music that probably was not suitable for a child of my age. Like I grew up listening to Scarface, NWA. Like I had visions of things that were street before I was doing those things. But as DC got violent, how did it change my life? I lost friends to the violence that occurred. And losing some of those friends, one specific one, it made me mad, and it made us respond. And aside from that, once I got into the hustle game, the street game, hanging with older guys, hanging with dudes from my neighborhood, then my neighborhood became something important to me. And when another neighborhood did something to somebody in my neighborhood, it was a destructive cycle of answer right back. And at 16 years old, although I didn't go to jail for a neighborhood beef, I still went to jail for things that were involved in the drug trade and the crack epidemic and the murder capital. So I got a life sentence at 16. That's one way it changed my life. And I lost the relative that lived in the house with me, not necessarily to the drug game, but to the murder capital, in time when everything was answer right back. And I spent 17 years of my life behind it, in prison. And I don't know what you do with cussing, but I fucked up some people's lives that was close to me in the process of Northwest Washington uptown being such a tight-knit community. By the time we were in the streets, from me to them and them back to me, we affected people that were connected to our family. Everybody in my family not a criminal, just like I'm sure that's the same case for everybody else. In all actuality, I probably was the only dumbass criminal in my family that deviated from an uptown philosophy of just getting money and making your life better. I got into violence. And violence is a part of certain things, but we got into it as juveniles and adolescents, and I don't believe we had the mental capacity to be involved in some of that stuff. And I mean, we could talk about that later, but that's just looking back. But that's what I think my answer to that question is, bro.
You had, said you had, gotten a life sentence at 16 or when you was in high school. So what was the background behind that? Like, what led to that?
All right, first of all, let me explain something, because a lot of times nowadays I say, hey, I got a life sentence. A lot of people don't understand what an intermediate sentence is. That's a sentence that you may have heard of before, 5 to 15. Those are two numbers. You do something in between or you do all of it. I got sentenced to 15 to life. Technically, that is a life sentence with a parole eligibility. You get it? All right, so if you get it, I think some other people may get it, so I'm gonna leave that alone. But in the process of doing that at 16, I ended up doing 17 years on the life sentence for other things to make parole. Now, what led up to it? Let me see what version I can give you. I'm gonna try to give you the clean version, but I'm gonna give you the real version because there's some other things going on with me right now that people have been talking about that fell into this case. So to be honest with you, I was hustling when I was a kid. I was selling cocaine. I probably started selling cocaine around 12 or 13 years old. Not no major cocaine, not nothing like regular what I just told you. I seen my cousin and them drop a bag of 20 rocks on the ground, very small. I elevated from that to buying wholesale, 5 for 50, 100, 10 for 100, and then I learned to buy a quarter ounce and so forth and work my way all the way up from that level. As a teenager, how do I want to say this? As I learned that, when you buy a product, so to speak, which we talking about cocaine, some is better than others. When I learned that somebody was, and I hate to say this like this, they say, oh, Eyone trying to paint the picture and make them the bad guys. I'm beyond that. I bought some stuff from a person. It's into my paperwork. It wasn't what it was supposed to be. And in my haste as a youngster, I got upset that I bought something that wasn't supposed to be. And I asked the people to come bring my money back and correct it. And in the process of that happening, I ain't like the way it went. And I ain't like the way it went. So I robbed him and I shot him and I ended up going to jail for murder. And I don't know no way to make that sound good or make that sound pretty. Sometimes when you in Rome, you do as the Romans do. And that's probably what I did at that age. Would I have done it now? Nah, I wouldn't have done it. I would have aborted the whole matter. But you asked me what led me to getting a life sentence, and you don't get a life sentence as a juvenile and get charged as an adult. If you do some little jaywalking, so I committed a terrible and a heinous act that I actually have remorse for. The person that passed away, in all actuality, I never intended to do anything to them. They came on a move with another guy that I intended to do anything to. This person survived the situation and told the police that the other guy was the bad guy and was the guy that was selling me this and selling me that, and that he set everything up, and one thing led to another, and I went to prison for it. But being as though I was just a subject of some internet slander, they brought this old 1993 case up, and it made me read it again, which is why I answered this question with so much thought. But that's what I went to jail for, bro. I went to jail for murder, assault with intent to kill, armed robbery, carrying a pistol without a license, carrying a pistol and a crime of violence, and I spent 17 years in prison on 15 to life sentence.
When you hear, the judge sentence you, and then you are in prison and you sitting behind them bars, what's going through your mind? Like, what are you thinking about, during that whole time? Like 17 years, like that's a long time.
For me, I was 16 years old when it happened. I was 17 years old when I was sentenced. I couldn't think past a few summers at that age just because I couldn't visualize it, or I wouldn't visualize it. But I'm gonna just take you to how I rationalized it. I rationalized it that if I survive one day after the next day after the next day, eventually I'll make it home. Now, I don't know what you know about Lorton Reformatory, but that was a dangerous, dangerous place. You could get 15 years or 10 years and not know if you can even do it. As a 16 and a 17-year-old, I chose not to think about whether I could do it or not. I tried to think about how to do it. And the only way you can ever do one day or 1,000 years is one day at a time. That's the best answer I could give you without trying to intellectualize something that's basically survival, bro. You gotta do what you gotta do, right or wrong, even going back to my case.
So you brought up Lorton, and I was gonna ask, that's still a place that's like talked about to this day. Like, what made Lorton different from other prisons?
Well, I wrote a book about Lorton, and hopefully people that watch your podcast or your interview with me, hopefully they'll go to Amazon.com and they'll get Lorton Legends by me. But that's a fiction book, that's a novel. But everything I wrote in the book is what happened in Lorton. What made Lorton different? To be honest with you, I don't think Lorton was much different than many old state prisons or penitentiaries where the prisoners or the convicts ran the prison. However, that's that's like a politically correct answer. I personally believe there was nothing like Lorton in the world, because you had dudes caught with tens of thousands of dollars. You had people that escaped. You had hitmen that left out the prison, took hits, came back to the prison on prison release. You had gangsters come inside the prison to kill enemies inside the prison. You had professional boxers such as Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Riddick Bowe come into the prison. Tommy Hearns even banged it out with somebody in the prison in the ring, just as Sugar Ray Leonard. They had a anti-nuclear missile launch watch at the prison. It's too many things that I could tell you about the prison that's different than any other old school prison. But if I had to compare it to other prisons, I would compare it to old places like Baltimore Penitentiary, Greater Ford in Pennsylvania that Bernard Hopkins came out of, Angola, the same prison C. Murders in now. These are old state prisons. And any old state prisons that are almost a century old, you're going to see things that are uniquely distinct at that prison. And that was one of the things, and that's one of the things that I think made Lorton different also. Lorton was the prison for the people of the nation's capital. If anybody knows their history on D.C., from the time of slavery to after slavery all the way up to this point in time in life, the black people are the majority of the people who go to jail. They are the majority of the people who are prosecuted in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. So I say that to say that all of these people were constantly flood Lorton until Lorton would bust at the seams and some of it would spill out into the federal system. But it's just something about DC. I don't know if it's in the mumbo sauce or if it's in the go-go, but it's something about DC dudes that we got a mentality that many of us may be a little bit more educated than the average street guy. And a lot of us think that we tough, at least when you talk about prison history. And I think a lot of that comes from Lorton. But Lorton is just a place, a very aggressive place, a place that, you know, teaches, culturizes, hones, you know, toughness, violence, and gangsterism down there. Like, if you met a person that was in Lorton that got a master's degree and took advantage of all the great things that they did have down there, because, you know, Pell Grants and college and master's degrees and music and acting and taking trips all the way to Las Vegas to do boxing, those things occurred, but you had to be a very strong individual to gravitate to those things. As a kid, I gravitated to what the gangsters was doing. I gravitated to where the money was at. I gravitated to what my father was doing there before me, and sadly, my father was there getting money, selling drugs, living on with his life. So at 16, I had to come to a point in my life where I had to decide what I wanted to do that would be different so that I wouldn't be in prison for the rest of my life. But that didn't occur in Lorton, to be honest with you. That didn't occur until I got in the federal system and I met people from other places that had other ideas that were able to share those ideas with me and also point me to those ideas in books. And the main thing that they pointed to me in one of those books was the idea of freedom. And that became my main objective after a while. I really didn't care about the rest of the jailhouse shit.